very good morning to the Chairman, Dr. Harsha Alas, the Managing Director, Madam Rohini Alas, Director, Madam Dinali Alas, the Principal, Mrs. Vinita Shenoy, the Deputy Principals, Mr. Rohana Pereira and Mrs. Nishota Anuraj, the Assistant Principals, Heads of Departments, Heads of Sections, teachers and students. Welcome to the Independence Day Assembly organized by the Math Society of 2021. Please join us in singing the school song.
Gateway, oh gateway, we pledge to tread thy glorious way. A beacon of light we shall be, for fellow beings apart to see. A beacon of light we shall be, for fellow beings apart to see. Gateway to learning and blessings our quest, ready we follow, daring the best, in work of red and grey and blue flags high. Higher, still higher is the rallying cry. Gateway, oh gateway, we pledge to tread thy glorious way. A beacon of light we shall be, for fellow beings apart to see. A beacon of light we shall be, for fellow beings apart to see. Nurtured as we are with understanding and love, we discipline ourselves, know what is from above. Teach the hair of you with perfect rapport. Shoulder to shoulder we will march to the fore. Gateway, oh gateway, we pledge to tread thy glorious way. A beacon of light we shall be, for fellow beings apart to see. A beacon of light we shall be, for fellow beings apart to see.
On the 4th of February 2021, we will be celebrating 73 years of independence in a world where we all strive to be global citizens, pursuing our final stages of education in foreign countries, engaging ourselves with cultures other than our own, reading and learning about history and current situations in different countries. We see that it is quite easy to lose track of what makes us who we are. The ideology which endorses the notion that we all are citizens of the world rather than individual countries seem to reduce the importance of a nation's sovereignty. But why do we consider a nation's sovereignty so precious? Is it the fact that we were born here, or our parents before us, or their parents before them? Is it because due to our intricate culture and tradition, religion and heritage, which leaves us with a unique cultural identity? Or is it the pride we carry regardless of where we are in the world, the pride to be Sri Lankan? These intrinsic values are what we have passed down from generations and what will be passed down for generations to come.
Looking back, Sri Lanka has always been filled with diverse cultures and was considered a spectacle to many industrious empires. The Greek and Roman geographers, who referred to us as Taprobane, mentioned in their ancient texts that we were a utopia. The Arabs and the Persians referred to us as Serendip and praised us for our rich spices and export. The Portuguese, Dutch and the British all sought Ceylon and conquered our then divided nation. It was our diversity which led to our subjugation. However, on February 4th, 1948, after uniting our multicultural nation, we marched to our liberation and gained independence. Today's assembly is a remembrance of the valiant efforts of our forefathers to rid our proud nation of its colonizers and unite our diverse nation as one and become the free independent nation of today, Sri Lanka.
The Portuguese arrived in Sri Lanka in 1505 and established trade relations with the Kotte Kingdom. They remained peacefully under the Vijayabhakol layer, where the kingdom of Kotte was separated into three different kingdoms, Sitavaka, Raigama and Kotte. Then they began intruding into the internal affairs of Sri Lanka, establishing control over the maritime regions of the island and sought to control its lucrative external trade. They exploited our political rivalries and used our then divided rulers to conquer the kingdoms within Sri Lanka. They went as far as the Kandyan kingdom, where they were pushed back by the Kandyan guerrilla forces until a truce was signed in 1621.
Now we have Himaya, Vohara, Pehevi, Insha and Lishan singing Yudde Tat Avith, which is a song about the invasion of the Portuguese and the Dutch.
The next item is a dance done by Nishenya, Saniti, Gehansa, Pasansa and Dulshi to Issara Adi Kale.
කාලේ වයලා වියෝලේ ඇහුවම නැටෙන තාලේ මල් මල් බයිල රාග කීවේ යාළුවේ මේ වගේ සතුටු සාදේ ඇපර් මිඤ්ඤ මායි බනාජී අර බැගර් මැලේ දවුන ජීවාජී කපිරිඤ්ඤ බයිල ගයා වයාලා Lalailal kiyemu natala Hedawada saya hätte boskarekkaye lassana tawama peenawa Rosalindo Rindona Mary Susana Dakinna Sahitenava Kepper Minya Mai Banaji Arabegar Mele Davuna Zivaji Kapirinya Baila Gaya Vayana Lala Ilala Kiyamunatala
The provisional peace was then broken by the Dutch East India Company, who sought to take advantage of the situation and steal the possessions of the Portuguese. They formed an alliance with the Candian kingdom and drove out the Portuguese in 1656. They then turned against the Candian kingdom and took control of all the Portuguese possessions. Soon after, kingdoms like Sitavaka fell and only the Candian kingdom remained.
The Dutch gave their portion of Sri Lanka to the British and left, making Sri Lanka a crown colony. The First Candian War, the first attempt to capture Kandy, ended bloodily with the British retreating. However, in 1815, the Candian kingdom fell at the hands of the British again due to our division. The next set of items would be depicting what led the Candian kingdom to fall.
In the Candian kingdom, under the rule of King Sri Vikramaraja Singha, it was a violent dictatorship. The people under his reign were severely oppressed by his barbaric reign. This made the Nilames, who at the time considered the voice of the people, to seek help from the English in order to depose of King Raja Singha and regain peace. During this period, John the Oily was an Englishman who pretended to be the friend of the Nilames by learning Sinhala and building relationships with the Nilames and the monks in order to meet his own ends.
At the time, King Sri Vikramaraja Singha suspected Ahalepola Nilame of plotting against him, although he had no evidence. He then ordered the execution of his family and the confiscation of his lands.
මෙම ද්‍රෝහියන්ගේ ඉසරසා දමනු ඇයව බෝගම්බර වැවේ කිල්ලා මරනු
මගේ ළමයි පරාදයි.
මෙම ද්‍රෝහියන්ව ඉසරසා දමනු
ඇයි රජතුමා එහෙම කරන්නේ? අපට මරන්න කුමක්ද? අවසාන රජතුමනි.
ඇයව බෝගම්බර වැවේ කිල්ලා මරනු අනපා අයන්ඩිය පියනවන්න මෑන්න සිටි මම පෙන්නන්න
Enraged, Ehelepola Nilame, with the help of the other Nilames, sought the help of the British and John the Oily to dispose of King Sri Vikramaraja Singha.
Through planning and the provision of sensitive information to the British, King Sri Vikramaraja Singha was then arrested by the British forces led by John the Oily and kept as a royal prisoner in the fort of Vellore.
After the successful coup organized by the Nilames and the 1815 convention signed by the members of the court, the Candian kingdom, which lasted 2,358 years of self-rule, became a British colony.
Opposition to the Candian Convention still remains strong. On the day of its enforcement, British soldiers took down the Sri Lankan flag and hoisted the Union Jack. Varyapola Sri Sumangala Thero, who witnessed this, removed the Union Jack and rehoisted the Sri Lankan flag.
We now have a presentation done by Akhil Sali highlighting the accomplishments of Sri Sumangala Thero.
Varyapola Sri Sumangala Thero, one of the most important Sri Lankan heroes towards freedom. Varyapola Sri Sumangala Thero was a Buddhist monk who lived in the early 19th century in Sri Lanka. He was an Anunayaka of the Askariya chapter. In 1815, Sinhalese leaders drew up the Kandyan Convention, handing over control of the country to the British. Venerable Sumangala Thero was very much against this convention and for handing over of the country to an invader. 2nd March 1815. This was a historic day. Sinhalese of the upcountry and the low country were scheduled to sign an agreement with the British government to hand over the administration of the entire country to the white imperialists. This took place in front of the sacred temple of the Tooth Relic. The Sinhalese chieftains and the English high officials were arrayed opposite the audience to sign the document at the auspicious time. Venerable Varyapula Sumangala Thero was destined to become the Anunayaka of the Askariya Mahavihara, was the caretaker of the temple of the Tooth Relic when this incident happened. Let's see what happened on this special day.
තොපට තොපේ කොඩිය මේ කන්ද උඩරට ඔසවන්නට නීතියෙන් ඉඩක් නැහැ. මේ නියමය තොපට කරේ කවුද? මේ සිංහල රට. තවමත් මේ සිංහල රට තොපලට බාර දෙන්න බෑ. වේලාව පැමිණෙන තුරු ඉවසන්න තරම් ආත්ම විශ්වාසයක් සුදු ජාතීන්ට නැද්ද?
Let's see what had happened in the play. Venerable Sumangala Thero had taken down the English flag and raised the Sinhalese flag again, declaring that until the convention was signed, the country still belonged to the Sinhalese and their flag will fly high until that time. This Sinhalese flag is believed to be the lion flag used by the last rulers of the country, and this event is mentioned in the books recording the history of the Askariya chapter. This gallant act of Venerable Varyapula Thero made his name go down in history as a brave struggle did not stop there. As the priest in charge of the Thevavu of the Sri Dalada Maligava, his mind was never distracted from his dream of passing on the Sinhala royal crown to a Sinhalese. In 1818, a rebellion started in the uplands of the country against the British rule. With the outbreak of this rebellion, Sri Sumangala Thero removed the relic of the tooth of the Buddha from the temple of the Tooth Relic in Kandy and went into hiding in Hanguranketa. He later handed it over to Kappadipola Disave, who was leading the rebellion. The possession of the Tooth Relic was traditionally regarded as a symbol of the right to rule the country, and the acquisition of it was a large morale boost to the rebels, who intensified their activities after that. However, he was captured by English soldiers in 1818 and was brought before the court-martial. He was tried for the offence of robbing the sacred tooth relic from the possession of the British government and was convicted. He was sentenced and incarcerated in the Jaffna prison. It has been reported later that Venerable Varyapula Sumangala Thero lived the life of an ascetic in Jaffna for the rest of his life. He was a brave bhikkhu who stood against British rulers and protected the sacred tooth relic from being captured by the English. The name of Ven Varyapula Sri Sumangala Thero generates a sense of pride in any Sri Lankan, even today. To commemorate the brave bhikkhu, a statue has been erected on the premises of the sacred tooth relic Mahamaluwa of the Dalada Maligava in Kandy.
The British have influenced our country and the people greatly. The most notorious influence was the introduction of their language. Even though the Sinhalese people use some words that resemble Dutch and Portuguese, only the English made a complete impression. From language to food and sports, the Sri Lankan people are still living and practicing the British style customs of our grandparents to some extent.
Notice how all the previous invasions always occurred due to our division, and how we were not united in the face of our invaders. This was a key reason for our colonization. However, moving into the future, Sri Lanka produced individuals like D.S. Senanayake, Honnam Balam, and Siddhi Lebe, who fostered bonds between different groups in Sri Lanka and became role models who advocated for our independence. These great individuals were the key reasons as to why we are the independent nation of today.
My country had been under European invaders for more than 300 years by the time I was born in 1884. I completed my education as most high and middle class Ceylonese children did at the time. With the establishment of tea plantations, alcohol was imported and started being sold in shops in main cities. My elder brother started speaking against this. I joined him with this mission. When riots spread across the country in 1915, which I had no involvement with, the British arrested me and many other Ceylonese leaders and imprisoned us. That included the Heva Vitarana brothers, who were in India at the time. Thousands of people were shot dead without trial. A team of remaining leaders, with E.W. Pereira, the Lion of Corte, managed to convince to lift the martial law, release the arrested leaders, and appoint a new governor. This was the beginning of my political life. The First World War was taking place. Life got harder. Living expenses were high. The force of nationalism in Ceylon gathered momentum. Leaders of all communities came together. We formed the Ceylon National Congress in 1919, which united Sinhalese and Tamil organizations. It voiced the need for an elected majority in the country's legal and financial control. This was the beginning of a journey which kept on imposing pressure on the colonial government to give us more opportunities to practice political power. As a result, time to time, there were committees and councils which formed, which allowed more and more local territorial representation. I was offered a knighthood in 1946, which I kindly refused. Finally, Salisbury Commission recommended total independence to Ceylon in 1948. Its constitutional recommendations were actually those drafted by me and my Board of Ministers in 1944. I became the first Prime Minister of independent Ceylon in 1948. I worked as the Minister of Agriculture. I believed Ceylon should be self-sufficient with rice. I also made plans to spread out the population into dry zones to allow them to cultivate. Irrigation systems were renovated to support agriculture in dry zones. I thought we should make use of the hydropower and constructed Lakshapana hydropower station. Principals, teachers, and dear students, now that there is independence and you have the best land for agriculture, I humbly request you to make use of our land and work hard to develop the country. Thank you for listening to me. Today is 21st March in 1952 and it's a fine morning. I must now go for my usual horse ride. I am Don Stephen Senanayake of Independent Ceylon.
By the time I was born, it had been 43 years since the Kandyan Convention was signed and the British took complete control over my country. We had two major rebellions against the British, Uwalasa and Matale Rebellion. Those costed many valuable lives. However, I was lucky enough to get good education and even higher education from Cambridge University. I entered Ceylon civil service in 1875 and held numerous posts in civil service ever since. I noticed certain things were not fair. For example, non-Christians had to register their children's birth at the Christian church. I managed to change this and establish several offices for the purpose. The taxes were too much of a burden to the common citizen, but the rich were not taxed so severely. I spoke about it and requested a solution, but the commission appointed didn't function properly due to the influence of the rich, who were making huge profits out of tea plantations. I believe in equal education for people of all classes and castes and worked towards it. I also led campaigns for a university in Ceylon and founded the Ceylon University Council in 1906. The British offered me a knighthood in 1914. In 1915, I was chosen as the president of Ceylon Social Service League for uplifting poorer communities. I managed to work fairly well with British, as well as Ceylonese of all classes. We had seen the riots and rebels didn't work, and a different approach was needed. The uprisings had been suppressed brutally. We knew we had to push the colonial government for political reforms. So, I entered the political field in 1913. Some of us, myself and Sinhalese leaders, got together to form the Ceylon National Congress in 1919 and voiced for local representation in governing bodies. I was its first president. We managed to maintain national unity for a while. These were the first steps. British practiced divide and rule policy as usual. They proposed communal representation while I pushed for territorial representation. My mission was to gather Ceylonese leaders of all different communities together to introduce constitutional reformations. I did my part. I do hope they will carry forward this independent movement till the end. Today is 9th January 1924. I'm in India on a Hindu pilgrimage, and I have a message. If our nation won't act carefully, the adverse impacts of the British policy divide and rule could last centuries, even after we've gained independence. Thank you for listening to me. I'm Ponnambalam Arunachalam.
I am Mohammad Qasim Siddileppe, born in Kandy on 12th June 1838 during British Ceylon. I am a lawyer, proctor, publisher, visionary, and Muslim community leader. My achievements are: in 1884, I pioneered the first Anglo-Muslim school. In 1882, I introduced a madrasa called Madrasatul Zahira, which later became Zahira College. I established schools in Kandy, Gampola, Kurunagala, and Polgahavela. I established a girls' school in Kandy. I printed school textbooks and gifted them. I have also been known as the father of Muslim education. I put in everything I possess to uplift the Muslim community culturally. Due to the inspiring life and work done by me, central government named me among the national heroes of Sri Lanka.
With the new reforms, the economy developed. Tea, coconut, and rubber became important plantations for the economy. With the propagation of the tea industry and a boom in education for the locals, infrastructure improved profoundly. Of all the infrastructures, the most important was the train routes that connected the country, which we still use today. The British left us a legacy of innovations which we still reap the benefits from.
It was in 1972 when Ceylon declared itself a republic and changed its name to Sri Lanka. William Gopallava became the first and only non-executive president of Sri Lanka. The 1978 constitution with 172 articles is what we have today. J.R. Jayawardena was the first executive president of Sri Lanka.
We now have a presentation by Janesh and Chanuth, highlighting the importance of unity and what role it played during the time leading up to our liberation.
With that, we are pleased to introduce the parade which showcases various cultures and ethnicities coming together and reminding us that we are one nation.
Sri Lanka. The